at the society as a whole. So these are some of the key pillars that we have of the economy. Next slide. I try to put these together in some bubbles because it is these sectors that are constantly interacting to generate economic activity. There's an output market, so people are producing goods and services. Labor is helping to produce those. The trade market, people are exporting and importing products. And the financial markets are providing the finance to do all of this. And in the center of all of this activity is the government, who have to coordinate activity to ensure that all markets operate effectively. Okay, so it seems a simple task. It is quite involved. So the coordination of all of this is quite important for policy. So if any part of the market fails or is not working effectively, then we have problems. Okay, we have unemployment if the labor market is not working effectively and if the output market is not there. So we want to take a closer look at what has really been happening in our economic system. And I need to go a little bit faster now. Is our economy expanding or contracting? And we try to do this by looking at our gross domestic product, which measures everything that we've produced in our society. Next slide. And the basic news here is not as positive. Over the last decade, since 2000, I think the economy, between 2000 and 2008, we were doing fairly well. The economy was growing very rapidly, as you know. And then, of course, we had the global recession, we had the global financial crisis, and the economic activity has really slowed quite substantially. So the non-energy sector, that sector that I talked about before, basically output there has been declining. In agriculture, in manufacturing, in construction, etc., it has been declining. And the sector that has been keeping the economy afloat so far is really the energy sector. So this is an issue that we have to tackle, and we have to tackle very fast if we are to provide the basis for sustained growth down the road. The bulk of the economy is concentrated in the energy sector. So, and this has its own dangers. As you all know, you need to have pretty much, you can't put all your eggs in one basket if you are to make it in this world. And for an economy as well, it needs to ensure that its eggs are not in one basket. So if you look at this simple pie chart, a lot of our economic activity is concentrated in the petrochemicals and energy sector. And the rest of the economy is much smaller. So this has its own dangers because if the energy sector fails for any period of time, we have problems. So that's basically the picture with the output sector. Inflation. And inflation is something that affects all of us. All of us have to go to the market, we have to buy goods and services. And this is one of the things I want you to pay a lot of attention to. Because at the end of the day, it determines your standard of living. If prices go up too high, you are not able to afford basic things, and your standard of living is affected. So inflation tends to occur when many prices in the economy are rising simultaneously. Not a single price, but many prices are rising together. And it is very important that we focus on this. And there are two basic notions of inflation that we measure in the economy. The first is what we call core inflation. In core inflation, we try to take away volatility of movements in food prices so that we can get a sense of what the underlying inflationary rate is. So core inflation takes away food prices, and headline inflation measures the change in everything else in the economy, including food prices. And the picture here is also not very great. The first chart diagram shows you what has been actually happening with food prices in our society. Food prices have been very volatile, and they have been much higher than the rate of headline and core inflation. So a key part of our inflationary problem that is arising in the country is arising because of food prices. And that says something. We're not producing enough food in sufficient quantities to enable us to keep these prices down. So we have to do something with respect to our own agricultural production if we are to ensure that, if we are to contain the sharp rises in food prices. Yesterday we actually issued the repo rate announcement, and this is an announcement as national scholars you'll need to pay a lot of attention to, because it gives you a month, it's issued every month, and it gives you a sense of what's going on with inflation in the country. And headline inflation, that first bit of inflation I talked to about, is 10.7%. This, by all standards, is high. We'd like to see inflation really around 2-3%, or thereabout. So for a country, it is pretty high, and part of the job of the central bank is to try to ensure that this, this rate of inflation is kept within a manageable level. And of course, food prices are increasing at about 25% on a year-on-year basis, very, very significantly. Core inflation is fairly well contained, and you can see how low it is at about 2.8%. This is basically the kind of rate we'd like all the others to converge towards, right? So we do have a problem with where inflation is going. Our labor markets. It's a little bit surprising that despite the poor performance of the economic system, the unemployment rate has remained quite low. So by international standards, we have an unemployment rate of just 5%, which is, by any stretch of the imagination, quite low. But this could disguise many things. And we have noticed that capacity utilization generally in the economy is still quite low. So this low rate may not be signaling anything about an upsurge in job prospects. And in a large way, the rate remains low because of the significant support that the government gives to many of the services sector, where most persons are employed. So this is something we also have to try to manage effectively going forward. So this diagram just gives you a sense of what has been happening with our unemployment rate, and it really has been coming down a bit sharply. Financial markets. When we think about financial markets, economists use a very fancy term. They call it financial structure. And financial structure really tells you about the institutions that are participating in the financial market. It tells you about the products these institutions sell. We have a fancy term for them. We call them instruments, whether they be deposit accounts, they be bonds, etc. And we also have financial regulation, rules by which these institutions operate. And these products are traded in financial markets. So you would hear terms like a foreign exchange market, where foreign exchange is actually bought and sold. You would hear about the stock market, where stocks are bought and sold. And you also will hear about the bond market, where bonds are bought and sold. So there are a number of markets here. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago has experienced very, very rapid growth in its financial markets over the last decade. So we have seen our financial structure really grow substantially. And the banking sector has been quite profitable by international standards. Some of my banking counterparts don't necessarily like to hear me say this, but banking has been a very, very strong and profitable sector here. Another sector that has grown significantly in importance is mutual funds. We approximately have at least 32 billion in mutual funds under management as at the end of 2010. The stock market, however, although it has been growing very rapidly between 2001 and 2006, performance of this market has actually slowed a lot.